managers are at this sticking point often. The thing that's stressing them out and burning them out often the most is the communication piece. They feel like they're pushing with the skills that they feel like are the right skills with all the team members, and actually they're coming up against it and not getting the results that they need to as a team.
In terms of, well, how do we make sure that our people feel good? And you said this at the start, Jace, when we were talking, people, doesn't matter what the machine is that you've got in your club, it's how people feel. It doesn't matter what the fruit bowl is or the yoga that you're doing, it's how people feel.
Managing those kind of people, they're probably going to want a more masculine, agentic, direct management style. That's what they're going to want, that's what they're going to need, and that's going to get the best performance out of them, and that's the kind of expectation. However, you can't just roll that model out everywhere and I'm just like shouting at people and being direct, because some people are not going to appreciate that.
Welcome to the Wellbeing Leaders podcast, your one-stop shop for all things leadership and well-being. We're your hosts, Charlotte Stebbing-Mills.
And I am Sam Harvey, and joining us today we have the wonderful Jason Jackson, a good friend of mine, performance coach, PhD scholar, guest lecturer, and the focus of his PhD is client retention, focusing on frameworks for evaluating leadership behaviours, specifically focused on retention. Welcome, mate. How did I do on that intro? Was it all right? Points out of 10.
Yeah, that was all right. I mean, I'm a man that wears many hats, so it's it can be confusing sometimes. And keeping it simple makes it clearer. But great to see you, buddy. You're looking well.
Thank you, mate. Thank you. Nice to have you here, and thank you for giving up a little bit of your day to come and talk to us about a topic that's close to both of our hearts, I think, and specifically looking at leadership behaviours and then focusing how we can actually retain people in our organisations.
I'd love for us to maybe kick off this conversation. So, as it seems, Jason and I have obviously crossed paths. Kind of from a distance, but for similar kind of organizations in the past. And I'm really curious to know from my side, but also for our listeners, like, how did you get into this kind of topic? Like, why has this fascinated you, coming from kind of that health and fitness background? Why are we now focused on this? What was kind of the scratch that you're itching that you're scratching, whichever way around that goes?
In what sense? Coming from a health and fitness background and now focusing on
what you're studying now?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I am driven to constantly seek to improve myself. And to have a positive impact on my environment. And if by the time I retire, if I can kind of say that I kind of moved the needle forward a bit on the personal training industry, and was able to kind of raise the standards in some way, I'd be kind of proud of the work that I've done. So I suppose rather than just endlessly promoting myself and marketing myself, I can be, I'm not going to say critical because of the kind of negative connotations, but quite kind of reflective on my practice and looking at areas that I can improve on, or that the industry can improve on. And I think one of my kind of frustrations was the kind of the low standards, the low or inconsistent results in the industry, and rather than just kind of wagging a finger at that, what can be done to kind of improve that? It's at the start of February, I've just done my kind of tax return. I'm not sure if you guys know what taxes are over in Dubai, but here in England, we have to kind of pay a percentage of our salary. So I hire a tax accountant to do this sums. You can Google it afterwards. I hire a tax accountant to do my sums. They submit my tax return. There is a point to this story. I don't expect to be, HMRC to come knocking on my door and, seizing my goods. I'm expecting this company to deliver on what I've asked them to do. I think the difference is with personal training is people can throw large sums of money at personal trainers, to help them lose weight, to help them improve their health, and actually the results are inconsistent or they're unreliable, and clients may not lose weight, they may not establish healthy practices. So what is that disconnect, and how can we kind of improve or increase the likelihood of being able to kind of deliver results? And when I kind of looked at my skills, we can look at things like biomechanics, anatomy, biochemistry, nutrition, all that kind of stuff. It wasn't really going deeper into that, those hard technical skills, but it was looking at the kind of interpersonal skills and how messages are, delivered, how they're received, how they're acted upon, how they're embedded. So I think actually the kind of skills missing within the industry is the kind of the interpersonal skills, the human skills that will make what we already know or make us more effective at delivering what we already know. So I've started a PhD, and as is the kind of nature of it, it's kind of evolved, it's taken shape, it was kind of behavior change, the behavior change wheel, a lot of the kind of stuff done around, the COVID-19, practices around changing behaviors of the population at large to, as Sam kind of introduced earlier, looking at kind of leadership model, leadership evaluation models within the sporting industry, within the sports industry, within the strength and conditioning industry. But, looking at all those things within the context of the relationship between a personal trainer and their client, that very kind of close, long-lasting relationship between those two individuals.
Love that. And it's so broadly applicable, isn't it? Because in reality, we're talking about humans here, and so looking at the leadership behaviors that help clients keep. Sorry, go ahead.
I just spoke over your apologies, bad manners. But yeah, my brother-in-law, when I was kind of telling him about chewing his ear off about one of my projects, basically what I do is I share information, right? That's what I do as a personal trainer. Now, my information might be about, this is the best exercise for you. This is how you do it. This is why you're doing it. This is why you're eating what you're eating. But it's just, I'm in a position of kind of authority or expertise, and I'm sharing information with another individual that's hired me to do so. Now, that as a premise is, pretty broadly applicable, right? So it's looking at, how we can optimize that relationship and that kind of delivery or that kind of transfer of information between people.
That's so interesting. And I think, first question, was that Ian who was chewing your ear off?
No, it's my other brother.
Nathan. Okay, got it. All right.
No, Nathan's not, perhaps not that cerebral, should we say, but no, on Laura's side.
Got it. Other side. Okay, so in reality, we're talking about looking at what is it that I, as somebody in a position of authority, or how, not why, am I communicating, or and I was told how is a good place to start in a PhD. What's your? I'd be interested in your opinion on that. But how am I conveying my what I need to in a way that I guess is tactful with that authority, right? Because that's such a consideration for so many people.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're ad-libbing, and I don't have any notes. I would change the word authority. I don't really like that word, mainly because I don't inherently defer to authority myself. I think expertise, I know something that you don't. That's fine. Things that I don't, but you're coming to me asking me to tell you how to do this thing. So it's not authority, it's expertise. And it's, how do you impart that information in a way that it's going to be acted upon? And, you said deliver tactfully. Yeah, that might be a way that you deliver the message. Equally, there's probably a strong case for, lack of tact and being, direct. If you look at, the interesting dynamic between athletes and their coaches, the athlete has to impress the coach, right? And, they have to kind of perform at a higher level to keep their place on the team. Obviously, in personal training, it tends to be kind of in reverse, and the personal trainer is, dancing to the song of the client. But if I want to get results out of my client, and my client says, I'm not saying this is like a standard thing you would roll out to all clients, but when my client says to me, sorry, I was too busy to do my steps, or I didn't bother with my food diary, you wouldn't accept that from an athlete right? You'd be like, why the hell not? Right, you're not sitting in this game. You're off. You're on the bench. Go home, get changed. So there's not always a need to kind of be tactful and mollycoddle people necessarily. I'm just saying it depends on the individual, and that, I suppose, is the point of my PhD research, is understanding how you as individuals like to be coached. Now, you, for example, Sam, having worked with you many times, I don't need to be as tactful. I'm coming from a good place, and it comes from a place of love, but I can be much more direct with you into why you're doing things. Why didn't you do that, Sam? We agreed on that. If you don't do this, then you're not going to get to this point.
I'm on the bench.
So you're on the bench.
I'm on the bench.
But I mean, quite often, that's a conversation that trainers need to learn to have, and I guess we need to kind of be mindful of making this applicable to your stuff. But quite often, I've been kind of mindful of cognitive dissonance, where you're working with an individual and their current behaviors, unless they change, they are not going to get them to their goal. Now, we need to be mindful that I'm being paid to get you to a point, rather than just validate your excuses. Yes. Or be your friend. I have a job to do, so sometimes that job, I think, is will require a slightly tougher, more direct approach. But I think we've gone off.
No, I like it.
I don't think I think it's something common that we see with when we go into organizations, when we work with them, particularly managers. Managers are at this sticking point often. The thing that's stressing them out and burning them out often the most is the communication piece. They feel like they're pushing with the skills that they feel like are the right skills with all the team members, and actually they're coming up against it and not getting the results that they need to as a team. So I think it's super, super relevant. And I'd really be curious to know what have you found so far in your research with regards to that, and how we perhaps need to personalize our approaches.
What have I found in my research?
Or any insights in particular?
I mean, I suppose, well, I can speak directly to my research. So I've conducted the largest study on client behavior, personal training client behavior to date, as far as I know, right? So it features 3,000 participants, so a huge study group over a 3-year time span. And it's, there's kind of looking at things like age homogeneity, as in whether the disparity in ages between client and trainer makes a difference, and then looking at the how the gender dynamics between male trainer, female trainer, male client, etc. Play out. And I would ask you to, which gender do you think of clients, which gender of client, male clients or female clients, are most kind of sensitive to the gender of their trainer? So where a retention, where is retention impacted greater between female clients or male clients?
Female from male trainers.
I would say from a males being more sensitive about the gender of their trainer. I would say it would be male. But from a retention perspective,
so which client do you think there'll be a bigger disparity when they are trained between male or female trainer? So men or women clients?
Women for me.
I think I would say women.
Okay. And why do you think that is?
I would say because men typically, and this is more of a just kind of the brain makeup is more kind of narrow focused, can focus on a goal and typically make solid decisions in relation to a goal, whereas women typically we are more peripheral and we'll look at everything. But I don't know, it's a tricky one. I don't want to choose a camp. That's where I'm coming from.
That would be my answer as well.
Okay, so when you look at so there's pretty even numbers. We've got 1,500 male clients, 1,500 female clients. We studied retention patterns. I studied retention patterns over 3 years, and when men are trained by male trainers, they train for 6% longer than when they're trained by female trainers. So that would be that would have been my guess, that men were more sensitive and demonstrated a stronger preference to male trainers. However, when women are trained by male trainers, they train for 20% longer, right? So it's a much bigger. So then, you look, that's the kind of the hard data. So that doesn't really, I don't really care your feelings on that. That is the number. That's the fact. The kind of the interpretation. Obviously, is down to kind of, a subjective analysis, and there's kind of many reasons, but maybe women prefer a more masculine leadership style, so more direct, agentic, unilateral.
Maybe we prefer it. Maybe that's the only option we've had for a very long time.
Yeah,
well,
and maybe is the other thing, right? Is what I think you kind of touched on earlier, Jace, is this is actually essentially a discussion of adaptive leadership, right? So this is how do I communicate to get results in any given situation?
Just coming back to your point, Charlotte, historically, personal training was more of a male dominated area. However, there's a roughly even amount of male and female trainers within third state. But I think to answer to refer to your question, there may be like assumptions based on competence, based on gender, which no one is saying are accurate or inaccurate, but that was kind of one of my kind of thoughts on it, that maybe females assume incorrectly men to be better trainers in more kind of masculine strength performance environments, and there's kind of preconceived notions as to and there are there's some interesting studies where the kind of the pushback on when people adopt like the different kind of gendered leadership style, when women are very kind of direct and dominant, there can be pushback on that. I'm not giving an opinion on this. It's not my point. My point is not to give an opinion on, but the research says that sometimes there are kind of assumptions on how people lead, and when people kind of step outside of that kind of quite narrow box, at the current time, people don't, there can be resistance to that. And Vic, who we know, both know well, Sam, as kind of, she's a corporate lawyer in an American law firm, goes over to America for these conferences, and it's even more exaggerated. And she said that some of the kind of very senior, very, very senior female partners almost act as like, a caricature of a man.
Yes, because that's how they've
spreading their legs in meetings, trying to adopt these very kind of exaggerated mannerisms of male leadership, because that's how they think they need. And we've spoken about this, right? Does Vic need to like shout and throw computers around the office in order to be kind of taken seriously? And Sam and I both agreed that no, you need to turn up as your kind of authentic self. There are societal expectations on how different people are supposed to behave.
Yeah, exactly. And it's navigating those in the best way we can for the betterment of well-being for everybody involved, right? And I think that's what kind of goes through my mind as you were talking about kind of the retention piece. I think that's fascinating, because I think that I'd be really curious to know how that translates into talent retention in organizations, because I reckon there's probably some correlation there. And it's a really, really nuanced subject, particularly in this region as well. So Sam, I'm curious to know your kind of thoughts on that as well.
I mean, I think well, I have several. Generally speaking, the feminine, and I'll steer clear of saying the female, because feminine leadership is known as being more transformative, right? So that's more affiliative, more democratic, more, hey, I want to take you on a kind of journey with me, right? And the masculine, and I'm using those words purposefully because Jason's just alluded to it, of that this kind of this kind of subgroup of women that have kind of moved into this role of and assumed a masculine character, because that's the only way they can think they can get ahead, when in reality there are many, many different ways to lead, right? And it's about that, I kind of touched on it earlier, that adaptive leadership. So the ability, and I think this is what I'm finding so fascinating about this, is that, Jace is looking at, okay, so what are the behaviors, and looking at retention, right? And it's so applicable to what we're talking about in terms of, well, how do we make sure that our people feel good? And you said this at the start, Jace, when we were talking, people, it doesn't matter what the machine is that you've got in your club, it's how people feel. It doesn't matter what the fruit bowl is or the yoga that you're doing, it's how people feel, right? And that matters how you act, right? And so as a leader, being aware of this and being able to go, oh, okay, these are the styles that I embody a lot. And there's a lot of pace setting in the UAE, right? We were talking about that earlier, Charlotte, like, got to get stuff done now. There's enough time in the day. It's the same in London, isn't it, Jason? Like, everyone's, if you walk around in London and you look down, someone's going to walk into you, basically, because they're all in a hurry and they're all more important than you. And so that kind of pace setting style just doesn't take people with you. And so I think that for me is really interesting to just kind of shine a light on that for a second and go, oh, okay, so I mean, how often do we actually talk about that? It's your behavior, leaders. You have to think about how you're acting to retain your people. Full stop.
Yeah, I mean, one of my concerns, anecdotally, and looking at the research anyway, is the importance placed on retention, or the lack of importance placed on retention. This constant drive for new members, new business, new this, that, and the other. But actually, it's significantly more cost effective to kind of retain existing talent, but very kind of little effort or kind of conscious thought goes into that. It's kind of all new business. So it's, I think all industries should be thinking about maximizing their retention and keeping hold of the talent.
100%.
And it's looking at, like you were saying, it's looking at what does the talent, or what does the staff value. And it's we spoke about well-being, and you guys can probably define that better than I can. But the way I would kind of look at that, on a surface level, is how does staff interact with managers? How do they interact with each other? Right, that's probably going to be the most important element. Not whether they have pizzas on Fridays, or a pool table in the staff room. Right, those are fluff and gimmicks and distractions, I would say, maybe. But it's actually the important stuff is how you turn up at work. You hang around with your buddies, you're having a good time or whatever, or there's a sense of collaboration, moving towards a common goal, whatever it may be, that you guys can kind of elaborate on. But it is, how you said, is how you feel when you get to work, rather than the kind of the shiny things around you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that, Jason. And it's working again on those systemic core issues, but opportunities, right? And rather than the fluffy stuff that you described. You mentioned age earlier before I interrupted around gender and got my hell was a little bit. It's around age, because this is something we're seeing a lot in organizations now. It was we had Hannah Wells, a community engagement lead, on the podcast on a previous episode, and she said that there's now 5 generations in the workplace, and leadership are now trying to figure out, well, how do we communicate, how do we interact with these different age groups and these different generations? So I'm curious to know if your work, your research has kind of given any insights into that might be useful for organizations moving forwards.
All right. Well, what I can tell you about age in the context of personal training, or the kind of the disparity or lack of between ages of clients and trainers, is that yes, it does have a statistically significant effect, as in, the greater the closer the distance, the closer the age between trainer and client, the longer the relationship will last. But that effect is very small to be almost practically insignificant. So what I would take by that is it actually doesn't matter. There is no ceiling in terms of age for personal trainers, because the effect of large age gaps doesn't really make much of a difference. So that would be my conclusion on that. That statistically you can detect it, but in kind of practical real terms it doesn't make a difference. And then I suppose if we try and link back kind of themes we've been discussing, there was an interesting study, nothing to do with my research, but a previous thing I was looking at, a trading desk in London, and they were looking at kind of swings in moods, which were kind of mediated by testosterone, this kind of geezer traders. And they found, one of the kind of recommendations for that, to kind of stop these kind of quite dramatic swings that kind of influence the markets, was to have kind of more women on the trading desk and like older men. So you kind of almost dilute the hormones or create a more kind of balanced environment. So I think that as a kind of setup or model for an office would be a good thing, right? A balance of genders and a balance of ages to not kind of, to avoid that kind of almost like mob mentality, swinging the kind of the mood or the kind of culture in kind of dramatic shifts and turns. So I think a balance of age and genders has been shown to be kind of beneficial for making money in London trading desks.
I love that. And what about the behaviors then? So, I mean, you've looked at those extensively, right? So what are the most effective in actually getting performance?
Well, I mean, I can dig out some of the kind of stuff on, they've looked in kind of athletes, but I think the point I would make is to ask, right? And that's the kind of the point, that I'll produce like a model, kind of refine a model where you would send it out to your kind of demographic for them to answer questions. So the way this model works, it has a scale. You rate things from 1 to 5. Never, seldom, sometimes, often, always. How do you like to be publicly praised, Sam? Yes, sometimes. You tick a few of these boxes. There's 60 questions, and then you would know how your staff, kind of collate that data, and then you'd understand that for this office, this environment, they like to be coached or led in this way. Because I think the problem is we just make assumptions, and a lot of us make assumptions based on no evidence or any kind of knowledge. It's just kind of like tacit experience, like we were talking about earlier. Like, you might be a manager of hundreds of people, and you have zero experience, zero education on how to manage people, and that's probably more common than not, right? So a starting point would be to find out, how does your team like to be managed? So, my last client, he was a young sales guy. They've got to hit their targets 6 months in a row, and then they get bought a Rolex watch, right? That's their kind of their motivator. And it's a high risk, high reward environment. They're getting managed out within a week or whatever if they're not the right fit. But that's kind of what they signed up for, right? And it's going to attract certain people. And if you're the wrong type of person, it's just not going to work for you. Fine, they're at other jobs. So when you're managing those kind of people, they're probably going to want a more masculine, agentic, direct,
yes,
management style. That's what they're going to want. That's what they're going to need, and that's going to get the best performance out of them. And that's the kind of expectation. However, you can't just roll that model out everywhere, and I'm just like shouting at people and being, you know, direct, because some people are not going to appreciate that.
Yeah.
But it's you know, it is literally ask or find out ways where you can kind of understand how people like to be kind of managed.
I like how simple that is, because our listeners can immediately go and do that, right? We talked a lot about you know, the unconscious biases and the connotations and the societal expectations that seep into our behaviors and we don't even know it. And when we start to ask, we start to shed light on a lot of those things. And so I think that's definitely something easy, tangible. It's a resource that somebody can do off the bat. It doesn't cost them any money. That will immediately, so long as they listen to what people say when they ask, it will actually move the needle for them.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, one of my criticisms, I suppose, of kind of Virgin Active, where we used to work, was that, you know, people had spent their entire careers there, right? So they know no different, right? So, you know, how can they possibly be doing the best job that how can they possibly be doing the best job where they've been doing the same thing they've been doing for the last 20 years with no kind of external influence? So find out how people want to be managed, how people want to be kind of led, and then, you know, people will respond better and, you know, be happier, more well adjusted, and, you know, I guess ultimately stay with the company for longer and be more productive.
Nice.
Amazing. Okay. Before we wrap up, we always like to ask our guests this, right? So we want to know what's one well-being practice that you would, and you know, you can be broad here, that you would chuck in the bin.
I think restrictive timelines, I would say, and, you know, clocking in and clocking out. You know, my last client, for example, you know, they have their targets, as you can imagine. They're, you know, pretty steep targets, but, you know, if they want to go to the gym at 11 o'clock in the morning, then they can go to the gym at 11 o'clock in the morning. You know, they don't have to, you know, they're not school children that they have to kind of go at this time. So I think, just having a bit more kind of flexibility, or lack of flexibility, you know, I'd put a stick in the bin, you know, having to be at work at this time, you know, this is your lunch break. And then you know, even if you're twiddling your thumbs and online shopping and killing time for the last half hour, and, you know, no one's leaving until, you know, the manager leaves, and then everyone disappears. You know, I think those kind of restrictive timelines are what I'd stick in the bin.
Brilliant. Okay. I really like that.
What
about for the win then?
Yeah, for the win. Yeah, what do you got?
I would say, what's my workplace being culture? I would say get your priorities in order. And that sounds a bit more, you know, a bit authoritarian, but like, as in, you know, make sure that, you know, you're working towards the right thing. You know, take a moment, you know, to make sure you're heading in the right direction. You know, the fitness industry is a notorious case for it. You know, I've seen so many like novelty you know, group exercises being introduced because someone, without any actual understanding of how members thinks that's, you know, and I understand how they came to that conclusion, but it's just an uneducated one. You know, thinks that that's how you retain members. So their priorities, the industry's priorities, are just kind of heading in the wrong direction, right? And if they actually thought about, you know, how do our members interact with one another, you know, how does staff interact with them, you know, that is what's going to keep our members, and that's what we're after. But we just kind of gone off in the wrong direction because no one's actually, you know, done the research.
You're that's like the perfect analogy of exactly what's happening in most businesses as well, right? Using the fitness industry as the example, because it's spot on. Get your priorities in order, look at the things that matter, stop with the market employees and the gimmicky stuff, and just focus on what matters. I mean, I'm with you for sure on that, on the win. Oh, Jason, I'm gonna have more time.
We haven't got much longer, Sam's time. I want to share something with I don't even know if it's actually that relevant, but it kind of really, and you'll know this person as well. So had a meeting with a couple guys, and they wanted to bring me back into Virgin to lead this project and design this body transformation package. We were kind of like in the negotiation stages at this point. I was outside of the company at this point, and then after, and I'm talking about intellectual property and how much am I going to get paid for this and so on. And then afterwards, the guy's gone, what's up with Jason? Like, who's he in this for? Is he in it for himself or is he in it for the company? And I was like, what a bizarre question. I'm in this for my family, right?
Yeah.
My priority. So if you think that I'm, like a company man, and we spoke about at the beginning, what I want to get out of my career is to kind of move the needle forward and have a positive impact on the company, on the fitness industry. That doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to put the wants of some companies' stakeholders over my own son. I mean, that's like ridiculous. And I think people, just kind of get lost in the nonsense. You can do a good job, but have your kind of priorities in order. Do you know what I mean? I don't know if that really links into it.
Yeah,
but
love it.
I was just so stunned by that question, that you think I'm going to put stakeholders I've never met over, spending time and, providing for my own family.
It brings that human element back into business, isn't it? When we pay attention to those things. And I kind of get it to a point, like, it happens. Business is fast. People want to get to where they want to go yesterday, but we can't do that at the expense of being mindful about how we offer people work, or how we just reward people for the input that they are giving, and staying true to a mission and a purpose, I think, is really, really something that it's a bit of a lost art these days. And hopefully it's something that people like us are nurturing within younger generations. I feel old now saying that, but I think it's necessary, especially when we want to change an industry. What are you laughing at, Sam? I'm not that old. I'm young.
I was just laughing at that comment. No, I love it. Look, Jace, thank you very much, mate. Thank you for giving up some of your time. We really appreciate it. How can people find you?
I guess the easiest way would be just to kind of hit me up on Instagram, Jason Jackson PT. If you want to kind of find out more about anything we've discussed, links to any studies, or want to get me to run any education sessions, just hit me up on there, Jason Jackson PT.
Love that, mate. Yeah, and you do share very liberally your expertise, so thank you for that. Okay, if you are enjoying the podcast, please like, subscribe, share it with your colleagues. And if you'd like to learn more about Wellbeing Leaders and our events and how to be involved, look us up on wellbeingleaders.me. Jace, thank you again. And enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much.
Cheers, buddy. See you later.
Nice one.